Welcome to the NanoCap podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of NanoCap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of NanoCap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week, I have Dr. Joseph Sinkule, CEO and founder of Klotho Neurosciences, stock ticker KLTO. Klotho Neurosciences is committed to the development of disease-modifying therapies for age-related cognitive and neurodegenerative disorders. Joseph, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely, Will. Thanks for the invitation.
Looking into your background, I saw a lot of Nebraska in there. And then I see a gap until you founded your first company. And so I was kind of curious what you did in those years. Was it kind of a research study type thing? Were you working in the field, or what were you up to before you founded your very first company?
Yeah, well, I was consulting at an interval of time. I retired several times along the way. I've been migrating from the clinic to the boardroom over the last 46 years. So I retired in 2005. I took a break about 6 months. I caught the entrepreneurial bug, and based on my expertise, was able to acquire assets, create value, sell them off, repeat. So a lot of that was bouncing around from consulting opportunity to consulting opportunity.
And it seems that a lot of the people I've interviewed, they tend to explain how a lot of people in, say, academia and then get into medical research and stuff and working in labs and such, you can just be stuck there forever. And that's a certain mindset kind of can handle that this is going to take decades to figure out this one breakthrough, and that's how their brain is wired. As you were saying, your brain just is wired to create shareholder value. And so, like, when did you know that kind of you were different and you're like, hey, I have great skills and assets that a lot of companies could use, and I should be helping them out actually on the private side opposed to working the public side? When did you kind of start working on that 6-year transition?
Sure. Well, I created my own contract research organization, CRO, and I worked it for 6 years, doing a lot of NIH, Department of Defense, biothreat stuff, a lot of out-of-the-box things, and also with a variety of clients. Ultimately, joined Quintiles, which was the largest global CRO at that period of time. So in the course of that 11 years, I saw hundreds and helped, probably 30 clients with clinical, regulatory, manufacturing, preclinical related issues. And after a while, I said, gee, they're raising money based on this. You got to be kidding. So I ultimately, caught the bug, said I can do this better, and basically started creating companies.
No, that's amazing to hear. And so, as you mentioned, you have seen probably every type of medical and novel idea under the sun. And then as I was reading through your bio, you've taken, I think it was like 7 different companies through FDA trials. It might be more now. But you have an extensive background in that. And so I'm always curious, when you say you've retired a bunch of times, you've seen it all, when did you first kind of hear about just like the concept of Klotho, and what sparked your interest?
Yeah, I've always been inspired by new technology and how it could benefit people, patients with debilitating diseases in particular, like cancer or neurodegenerative diseases. So I felt that, one could identify assets, identify how much it would take money-wise, personnel-wise to get to the next value creation milestone, and set about doing it. And that's really been probably over the last 20 some years of my life doing that exact thing.
And was there anything novel about Klotho that you said, hey, this is what I want to spend my time on?
Oh, I got sucked in big time. I mean, I consulted for a virtual one-person company who was trying to find somebody to manufacture the protein because they had kidney disease and knew that was going to turn into chronic kidney disease. And this is a high net worth individual. So I helped them out. And in the course of doing so, I really literally did get sucked in. I've read probably hundreds of articles regarding Klotho in all different therapeutic areas, and really focused on neurosciences, which was at the time out of my basket of goodies, because I really had an oncology upbringing, if you will, professional upbringing. So in the neurosciences, it's much more complex than cancer. Cancer, you want to kill cells or activate the immune system to eliminate cancer cells. But you basically infuse a drug or take an oral drug and it goes and does its thing. Neuroscience is a little bit different. The diseased organ is usually the brain or extensions from the brain, comprising the central nervous system, CNS, which is much more sensitive. It's much more highly risky or risk-oriented. And you don't have direct access to it unless you drill holes in the skull or poke the spinal cord. So access to the diseased organ is much more problematic than cancer. And what we have now in most of these neurologic diseases are therapies to treat the symptoms of the disease, not really the disease itself. So the more I drill down into Klotho, it's 2 isoforms, full-length protein, the secreted Klotho, which is where our intellectual property lies. I gathered technologies that I felt would actually solve these problems, treat the disease caused by the loss of this protein called Klotho, using an adeno-associated virus, an AAV vector that crosses the blood-brain barrier, and a gene that replenishes the cells with the protective protein called Klotho. So that's kind of where we're at today, and beginning to march down that pathway.
Yeah, you kind of just went over my next question a little bit, but I would love if you just could kind of, in your own words, explain the Klotho protein and then what Klotho Neurosciences is. Because it reminds me of the company CRISPR, where it's a name of technology and a business at once, and you got to kind of separate the two. So explain first off what Klotho is and how it's this crazy revolutionary thing that they said in some monkeys, I heard, that it can increase intelligence by 20%. It's like this crazy wonder protein. And then then we can get into exactly what Klotho Neurosciences is and how you guys are commercializing it.
Yeah, sure. And again, Klotho, no one really knows much about it. It's not part of the genetics session of medical school. No one is really taught about it. We're out there kind of ringing a bell that hopefully will attract people and more money to keep us going. But Klotho is a gene found in all mammals. So all mammals have this gene, which is really linked to lifespan. Klotho is named after the Greek goddess, the daughter of Zeus, Klotho with the C, Klotho, who spins the thread of life. So Klotho is referred to in the literature as the anti-aging gene, and it was discovered based on a fellow at University of Texas Southwestern doing his postdoc there named Makoto Kuro-o. And Kuro-o is on our scientific advisory board. Never met him, but spoke to him several times. And what he did is he knocked out several gene segments of mouse genes. And I had basically had mice who were born normally, but died of a syndrome related to definitely resembling human aging. So atherosclerosis, osteoporosis, fibrosis, diabetes, elevated blood pressure, severe cognitive dysfunction, and basically showed that if the mouse died within weeks after birth of these age-related pathologies. And then he had a postdoc who amplified the number of copies of the Klotho gene, so overexpressed it, and actually found in normal, healthy mice, they lived 30 to 40% longer than the healthy mice, normal mice, not treated. So that's, again, where he kind of came up with the name Klotho and the anti-aging gene. So it has multiple mechanisms of action. In the literature, there's no receptor binding it in our cells. The mechanism of action is still a little bit under investigation, but the mechanisms include resistance to oxidative stress. So if cells of the body get injured, it is there to repair those injuries. It improves mitochondrial function, so it has an energy component to it. It controls insulin-like growth factor pathways, which probably has something to do with enhanced aging, and several other important life-prolonging functions. I call it a master gene because it is really high up in the control of many downstream genes and proteins. We have a patented form of the two isoforms of the protein called secreted Klotho, or SKL. Secreted Klotho is produced in humans primarily in the choroid plexus and the hippocampus regions of the brain. So it basically circulates throughout the spinal cord, the dendrites extending out of the spinal cord of the central nervous system, and in the brain. In mice, it's actually produced more in the kidneys. So it's a fair mouse model using mouse Klotho. Mouse Klotho and human Klotho and non-human primate Klotho are very homologous, very much the same, only differing by 10 or 15% in the amino acid structure. So very important protein. The clinical work in humans should mimic very closely the data that we have in animal models of human diseases. First candidate is what we call KLTO 202. 202 is a gene therapy that uses a muscle tissue specific promoter in front of the gene, driving the gene to make the protein. It's carried to the tissue by a muscle tissue specific targeting AAV called myo AAV. And so the gene is delivered to the neuromuscular junction where the brain is communicating with the muscles of the body. And that's where the defect in motor neuron disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, that's where the defect is at. It's the neurons begin to die away from the muscle neuromuscular junction. So by providing the protein and allowing it to repair those defects, we've seen really compelling clinical data in two mouse models of ALS. Now, KLTO, it's a different gene construct, but it has a human promoter driving the expression of the SKL protein from the gene sequence. But in this regard, so it's different than 202. And what it does, it has an AAV vector that I found that actually crosses the blood-brain barrier, which is unique because these serotypes typically do not cross the blood-brain barrier, and the Klotho protein does not cross the blood-brain barrier if it's made systemically. So this is really an advanced technology that we're applying here to brain-oriented diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's, and so on. Again, we have animal data in models of progeria, which is a rapid aging model where it slows down the rapid aging process with a single treatment. And in normal healthy mice, again, expanding their lifespan by 25 to 30%. And then 303, KLTO 303 is very research oriented at this point. I don't have much to say about it other than it's a recombinant protein. trapped in either an exosome or some other delivery system other than AAV. Exosomes cross the blood-brain barrier, so we may be able to deliver just the protein already made in a little tiny exosome into the blood-brain barrier. So that's kind of our lineup right away.
So, to go kind of to the Alzheimer's slash dementia side of things, one of the things I was reading was how there's these different markers that they have nowadays that they can tell pretty early on if you have a 30% chance of having, or a better chance of having, say, dementia or Alzheimer's, and or you may have 80% because you have this marker. So, is your treatment, is this something that you might want to start with when, say, you're 25 and you start realizing that you have this marker and you have this family history? Or is this something that once you start having neurocognitive decline, that you start kind of getting into it later?
Yeah, no. And we have a companion diagnostic that looks at all of the genes associated with these particular diseases of the central nervous system. And it also looks at the 6 or 7 genes that are associated with, positively associated with longevity, like Klotho, like FOXO3, like SIRT6, and so on. There's about 6 of these that are definitively linked to the centenarians who live to be over 100 years old. So we'll have that diagnostic in place. And as the promoter gets methylated, it interferes with the transcription of the gene into a messenger RNA to go out and make the protein. So that's why it decreases over time at about middle age. So I would foresee, like 101, maybe at middle age, everyone gets the test to see what genes they have that are functional, a DNA methylation test to see how much of the promoter is methylated and messing up the transcription of the protective protein. And if that's the case, they get a single dose of that gene therapy product. And from the other gene therapy studies I've been involved with, we have a single dose now making therapeutic levels of factor 8 and factor 9 that are 3.5 years out after a single dose. So hopefully, this would be a single dose administration that lasts a lifetime without having to go get additional medicines.
That's amazing. Speaking of how amazing it is, that makes me wonder about kind of just your business plan, your business model. As you mentioned, you got to hit these benchmarks to get the next funding round and those types of things. And so how do you balance that? As you said, you've read hundreds of papers. You probably find out something every couple of weeks new that Klotho is tied to that can help out people. But at the same time, you have these things like 101, 202, and 303 that you're already working on. How do you decide how much to spend all your time on 101, 202 for now, just to get those through and get them into patients? Or how much do you chase the shiny object, not only because there's so many other ways it can help people, but also it's that much more you can tell the stories to investors of, man, we're really onto something. If we had X amount more dollars, we could get 10 more patents, and then we could really be cooking. Like, how do you balance that?
Well, that's part of the job. It's that's why I get paid the big bucks, right? It's part of the job. You have to, negotiate these costs, discuss with my team our priority items 1, 2, and 3, and we chose ALS because my cousin Karen died of ALS as a young woman.
Wow.
A year and a half after diagnosis, and we saw her decline very rapidly from normal to wheelchair to ventilator to death. So there's a bit of a personal matter here, but typically patients die within 2 to 3 years after their diagnosis. And that's why if we can intercede early and correct some of these deficiencies, the dying back, prevent that further or potentially improve it. I won't say cure it, but do something to prolong that person's life to 4 to 6 years. Wouldn't that be great? how about the diaphragm, which is really the main cause of death, because the muscle, this diaphragm is the largest muscle in the body, and it allows us to breathe in air and exhale. And when that stops getting the message from the brain as an involuntary response, then that's it. So we felt that with some recent biomarkers that are now validated and approvable from FDA's perspective, that's really what we're going after first. Alzheimer's, it's such a huge population around the world that we're actually looking for a corporate partner to come in and to work with us to develop those products related to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. And we'll stay with more of the orphan drug, the rare diseases, the studies that we can do a little bit faster and get approval based on fewer patients, so a little less expensive, like ALS and Huntington's and ataxia, etc.
So kind of a hybrid approach of for some things you might want to license out your patents, you might want to license it out to someone who can distribute it, spend the money to get it over the finish line maybe, and then get it into as many people's hands as possible for something closer to like Alzheimer's. But then, like you said, okay, orphan drugs or things that are a little bit more kind of one-off that you guys have the time to really narrow it down and really figure out how to solve those kind of edge cases.
Yeah, I mean, a success in any one of these horrific diseases is going to be wonderful. Wonderful for the patients, wonderful for the company and shareholders, but just wonderful.
So as we're kind of wrapping up here, how do you see the next like 3 to 5 years playing out? I'm not asking for any revenue projections or anything, but is it just keep just going through the studies and just keep chugging along, or how do you see it playing out in the next 5 years?
Well, we'll be driving both of these programs and a few more. I'm bringing in additional assets that will, again, if we can extend a lifespan by 40%, more people will live to be 100 years old. But what can kill them in the interim? Well, or make them in such a state they don't want to live to be 100. Well, muscle wasting, bone loss, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, skin, not so important. We can live with wrinkled skin, but certainly muscle wasting and bone loss and heart disease, kidney disease are problems. So if we can add assets to the single dose gene therapy that will interfere with the progression or delay the progression of those other pathologies, that's really what I'm trying to do with the company. Again, we're starting with a anti-aging gene that shows increase in lifespan, but you don't want to be in bed for the last 20 years of your life with some other disease, some other pathology. So that's what it may be stem cell oriented. It may be, small molecule oriented. So I've been kind of searching for those transformative processes that we can add to the core technology of Klotho.
And I'm just kind of curious as we wrap up, as you wake up in the morning, what journals are you scrolling through? Kind of where are you finding your papers? Are you passing them around with other friends that you discuss this kind of stuff with? Is there just a few journals that you check daily to see if there's any new news? Or how do you keep up with just all these different changes every day to day?
Well, I do. I try to. It's it's a job. I wake up at all times of the night and jump to my computer and start doing things. At 3, 4, 5 in the morning before everyone wakes up in my house here. So I do. I still dive into the science, and I'm probably the only one in the company that is giving leadership relative to what are we bringing in? What is the vision? What's the long term? What do we do to correct muscle wasting? What do we do to correct bone loss, et cetera? So that's really, I drive all of that. And I enjoy doing it a lot. So I'm happy doing it. I'm kind of, in my early 70s. I don't, play golf. So I have the time and the energy and the ability to go and find assets that will really add value to the company. And I love doing it.
Well, Dr. Sinkule, thank you so much for the countless number of years you may have extended people's lives and livable lives, like you're saying, not just hanging out in bed. And for those still listening, there's some great Peter Attia podcasts, a great Tim Ferriss podcast recently, all about Klotho, the protein, and explaining everything it can do. So if you guys are looking more into just that part of it, do check that out. Dr. Sinkule, if my listeners want to hear more about what you're up to and follow along, where should I send them?
Well, we have a KlothoNeuro.com website. My CFO has an email address there. Mine is in there as well. It's pretty simple. Joseph@KlothoNeuro.com. And I welcome, any comments, any input, any ideas on, what if we do this and that. So I'm very open-minded to all the listeners out there. And I really believe Klotho is quite special. This is something quite different. Not only the science, but also the people I'm working with are quite special. So I thank you, Will, for the opportunity to kind of get out there. This is only the second podcast that I've done, so this is all new to me. And I thought your questions were very good, so I want to thank you as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Those of you still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement therefore by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast Express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in